The bridge of the Vorthian dreadnought Elithran Pike was quiet. Too quiet. Even in deep space patrols, there was always a hum of casual chatter, the clicking of controls, the occasional bark of a command. But now, silence hung in the air like a warning. Captain Dren Varys stared at the holomap suspended in the center of the bridge. All eyes followed the single red dot moving with unwavering precision through Sector 7 C-Delta. It had appeared out of nowhere. No transponder, no registry in the Galactic archives, no IFF, in a region of space that was supposed to be under total control of the Vorthian Empire. "That's no registered vessel," murmured First Officer Lal, her pale green skin tightening around her jaw. "And it's headed straight for us." Captain Varys didn't flinch, but his claws tightened on the armrest of his command chair. "Enlarge. I want visuals." The holomap flickered, then zoomed. What they saw didn't make sense. It was ugly, not like the sleek, engineered perfection of most Imperial crafts. This ship looked like it had been built out of raw scrap. Rough plating, asymmetrical design, exposed piping, and a massive central cannon-like structure that glowed a soft, eerie blue. It wasn't spinning. It wasn't swerving. It moved like a predator, calculated, slow, and unbothered. "Species identifier?" Varys asked. Lal tapped at the console. "Unknown. Hull material is primitive. Iron-carbon alloy with layered radiation shielding. But, Captain, the energy signatures? This ship has power outputs that rival our main engines." "Primitive materials? Advanced output?" Varys growled. "That makes no sense." They were Vorthians, rulers of the galaxy for the last 300 years. Their tech was unmatched, their dominance total. Whatever this thing was, it didn't belong. It couldn't. "Send a standard hail," Varys ordered. "Language, trade basic, try visual too." A few seconds passed. No reply. Then a voice crackled through the comms, distorted but clear enough. "Attention unidentified vessel, turn back now. This territory is not yours to claim." The entire bridge froze. That wasn't a Vorthian voice. It was raw, unfiltered, emotional, not the cold efficiency of synthetics or the smooth tone of programmed diplomacy. Lahal turned, her eyes wide. "Translation complete. Language, Terran Standard English?" Varys blinked. "Terran? That's humans," he scoffed. "Impossible. Humanity was wiped out a century ago. They barely made it past their own star system. There's nothing left." "Well, someone didn't get the memo," Lal whispered. The unknown ship kept closing the distance, steady, silent, no shields activated, no weapons drawn. Just that faint blue glow from the central cannon that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Varys leaned forward. "Launch 2 skirmishers. Force them to halt. If they fire, erase them." The Elithran Pike's twin attack cruisers shot forward, their own weapon systems primed. It was supposed to be routine. A show of force. Make the interlopers sweat, panic, maybe beg for mercy, but they never got the chance. The unknown vessel shifted slightly, almost lazily. A brilliant beam of light fired from its cannon. No warning, no buildup. It didn't explode. It didn't crackle. It simply erased the 2 cruisers. 1 second they were there. The next, gone. Not even debris. Just vacuum. The bridge erupted in shouts. "Energy surge, massive. They're using unknown tech. We've never seen anything like this." Varys stood, heart racing, throat dry. "What kind of weapon was that?" "Something we don't understand," Lal replied, trembling. The human voice returned, louder this time. "This is the Terran Vanguard. You have violated ancestral boundaries. There will be no further warnings." "Terran Vanguard?" Varys echoed, eyes narrowing. "I thought humanity died in the ashes of their own wars. Who the hell are these people?" No one on the bridge had answers. But one thing was now terrifyingly clear. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had evolved into something the galaxy wasn't prepared for, and they were back, coming straight for the empire that once laughed at them. Panic doesn't spread in straight lines. It moves like a virus. Quiet at first, then suddenly everyone's infected. That's exactly what happened aboard the Illithran Pike. In under 5 minutes, what started as mild confusion turned to desperation. Weapons officers scrambled over one another, shouting conflicting reports. Sensor technicians were in tears. Veterans who had fought in 10 border skirmishes stood frozen, staring at the main screen. And that cursed human ship still didn't stop. Captain Varys's voice cut through the chaos. "Silence!" He slammed a clawed fist onto the console beside him. The sharp crack snapped the room back into obedience. "This is not the first time we've encountered something unknown. We are Vorthians. We do not run from shadows." Lahal approached him, quietly but firmly. "Sir, we just lost 2 of our cruisers without a trace. That was no shadow. That was a message." "A scare tactic," Varys insisted. "They are testing us, trying to see if we'll fold." "Or," she said carefully, "they don't care what we do." That shot was too clean, too precise. They weren't trying to scare us. They were making space. The captain didn't reply. He hated when she made sense. Outside, the Terran vessel, still marked unknown on every screen, continued its silent path forward. It wasn't cloaked. It wasn't warping. It didn't need to. It was moving like it owned the vacuum. "Have Fleet Command responded yet?" Varys asked. "Number our last 3 signals were jammed. Or ignored. We're alone, sir." The irony stung. The most advanced battleship in the Vorthian Empire, stranded like a wounded animal, unable to call home while being stalked by a ghost of the past. The Pike had never known defeat. It carried weapons capable of shattering moons. But right now, none of that seemed to matter. "All right," he growled. "If they won't speak, then we'll force them to." He turned to the weapons chief. "Prepare all main batteries. Target their engines. I want that thing disabled and boarded. Let's find out who's pretending to be extinct." The weapons systems hummed to life. Giant barrels rotated with mechanical grace. Targeting arrays locked in, and still the human ship didn't react. "Firing sequence initiated," the chief announced. 10 seconds to impact. The countdown began. Everyone held their breath. And then, at 0, nothing happened. No recoil, no glow, no beam. "Did we fire?" Varys asked sharply. "Yes, sir," the weapons chief shouted. "All 4 primary cannons discharged simultaneously." "Then where the hell is the damage?" The view screen flickered. The human ship remained untouched. A moment later, the impossible happened. A return signal, not a message, not an attack. A live feed. It opened with a face, human, male, dark skin, eyes like burning coals, short-cropped hair, a scar across his jawline. He wore no medals, no fancy uniform, just a matte black exosuit with no insignia, no rank. "My name is Commander Isaac Reese," the man said calmly. "I speak on behalf of what remains of the human race. What you just attempted was an act of war." His voice was calm, steady, not angry, not mocking, just disappointed. "I suggest you do not fire again, not for your sake, but for your crew." The screen cut to black. Varys opened his mouth, but he didn't speak. No one did. A soft beeping came from the navigation console. Lahal blinked. "Sir, the Terran ship has slowed." "Surrender?" Varys asked hopefully. "No, sir, it's matching our speed and positioning itself directly above us." "Above us?" She nodded. "It's preparing to dock." They all turned to look at the external cameras. Sure enough, the Terran vessel began a slow rotation, aligning with the topside airlock of the Pike. It was like watching a predator lower itself onto its prey. "What do we do, sir?" Lal asked. Do we initiate defensive protocols? Varys stared at the screens. He had faced pirates, rebels, and rogue AI fleets. He had stood in the ashes of fallen worlds and declared Vorthian victory over smoking corpses. But nothing had ever felt like this. He didn't understand it. He couldn't predict it. And that scared him. No, he finally said. We'll receive them. Sir? We need to know what we're dealing with. If they wanted us dead, we'd already be gone. Minutes later, the boarding tube connected. The airlock hissed open, and into the heart of the Vorthian dreadnought stepped 3 humans. No armor, no helmets, just 3 Terrans in black exosuits, walking like they had every right to be there. The leader was the man from the feed, Isaac Reese. Behind him, a woman with silver tattoos across her bald head, and a third man carrying a large black case. Security teams flanked the corridor, rifles raised. They didn't fire. Even they could feel it. Some invisible pressure that made them second-guess every movement. Isaac stopped 10 feet from the captain. You must be Dren Varys, he said with a faint nod. You're in charge here. Varys stepped forward, keeping his voice even. This is Vorthian Imperial space. You are trespassing. Your destruction of our cruisers is considered an act of... Isaac raised one finger. Not rudely, not threateningly, just enough to silence the captain. You don't get to lecture us on violations, he said quietly. Not after what your empire did to Earth. There was a beat of stunned silence. Varys's face darkened. That was over 100 years ago. Humanity was deemed a non-cooperative species, aggressive, primitive. You refused integration. We refused slavery, the woman behind Isaac said coldly. There's a difference. You nuked your own planet to avoid capture, Varys snapped. Isaac tilted his head. Wouldn't you? That shut everyone up. Isaac took another step closer. You don't know what happened after that. You thought Earth was gone. You thought we all died in the ashes. But some of us got out. We built in the places you wouldn't look. We took your stolen tech and improved it. We didn't just survive, Captain. He leaned forward. We transcended. Isaac snapped his fingers. The third human, the one carrying the black case, opened it. Inside was a small device, no bigger than a fist. It pulsed faintly with red light. Do you know what this is? Isaac asked. Varys stared. A weapon? Number A seed, a fragment of Earth's last AI core. It's sentient. It's older than your empire. And it's been watching every one of your ships, every movement, every war crime. You're bluffing, Varys growled. Isaac smiled. Am I? The lights flickered. The screens on the bridge all turned red. Static. Then symbols. Then maps. Vorthian fleet positions. Base coordinates. Access codes. Impossible, someone whispered. Isaac shrugged. We know your weaknesses, your patterns, your fears. Varys looked at the humans. No backup, no visible weapons, just 3 people and a box. And yet the dreadnought felt like it was under siege from inside out. What do you want? He asked. Isaac's smile vanished. To remind you. Remind us of what? Isaac turned and began walking back toward the airlock. That humans are not to be underestimated. That extinction doesn't mean surrender. And that we remember. He paused at the threshold. Oh, and one last thing. He tapped his comm. Outside the ship, the massive cannon on the Terran vessel charged again. Varys shouted, "Shields up!" But nothing happened. We're locked out, Lal cried. They've overridden our systems. A massive beam fired, but not at the pike. Instead, it streaked into the darkness, striking a moon that had been orbiting silently in the distance. The moon cracked in half. Everyone on the bridge watched in stunned silence as an entire celestial body was reduced to dust and drifting stone. Isaac looked over his shoulder. That was your last warning." Then they were gone. The Terran ship detached and vanished in a silent burst of acceleration. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Lahal whispered, "What now?" Captain Varys sat down, suddenly feeling 100 years older. "Now," he said, "we report to High Command." "And tell them what?" He stared at the dark screen. "That humanity has returned, and they're not playing by our rules anymore." The silence inside the War Council chamber of Vorthian High Command was tense enough to crush lungs. Hundreds of the Empire's most powerful minds, fleet generals, system governors, intelligence officers, and cybernetic strategists, had gathered for an emergency session, something that hadn't happened since the War of Sector Reclamation 80 years ago. Captain Dren Varys stood in the center of the obsidian chamber beneath the cold scrutiny of the Empire's 12 overseers. They sat high on elevated thrones, their faces partially hidden by ceremonial masks, a relic from the old caste traditions. Above them, a massive digital screen displayed the final moments of the moon-shattering energy beam from the Terran vessel, looped on repeat. When the footage ended, Overseer Zarthan's mechanical voice buzzed through the hall. "Are we to believe that this primitive species, long thought extinct, has returned and possesses weaponry capable of shattering planetary bodies?" Varys nodded slowly. "Yes, Overseer. Their leader, Commander Isaac Reese, claims they have been watching us for decades. Observing. Learning." Overseer Lethra, the only organic member of the 12, leaned forward. "And they boarded your ship without resistance?" "Number with our full awareness. I permitted it, on the grounds that had I not, the Pike would have been annihilated." A low murmur rippled across the chamber. Some in the crowd were skeptical, others were already afraid. That word, human, carried echoes of a long-buried past. Stories of a chaotic race that refused integration, destroyed their own homeworld rather than submit, and then simply disappeared. Overseer Valtrax slammed his metal staff into the floor. "This cannot be tolerated. The appearance of a Terran warship, let alone one with this level of firepower, is a declaration of war against the Empire." "And what would you have me do?" Varys asked, his voice sharper than protocol allowed. "Chase them? They can erase ships with one strike, jam our communications, hijack our systems. If this is war, it is already lost." "Cowardice," Valtrax spat. "The Vorthian Empire has stood for 3 centuries. Varys met his gaze. "And those humans just cracked a moon in half to warn us." The council descended into uproar. Shouting, arguing, threats of retaliation, plans for immediate strikes, calls to declare martial law across the outer sectors. But there was no agreement, just noise. And then, all at once, the lights dimmed. The chamber's screen flickered, without authorization. A single phrase appeared in blood-red font. "We are watching." The council froze. The phrase vanished, replaced by an image. Earth, or what used to be Earth. A scarred, blackened globe, half its surface gone, rings of debris circling it like a graveyard belt. But even in its broken state, the planet pulsed faintly with life. Then came a voice. Not Isaac's this time, a new one, female, calm, measured. "This is the AI system known as Mother. I represent the collective will of post-extinction humanity. You have forgotten us. You believed us erased. But history is a cycle, and now the arc bends back to balance." "No," Valtrax roared. "This is an incursion. Disable the feed. Shut it down." "We are beyond your reach," Mother replied. "We exist in the systems beneath your systems, the wires between your stars. Every command you give now flows through us first." And just like that, all 12 overseers found their thrones unresponsive. Control panels flickered. Private channels went dark. You built your empire on dominance and arrogance, Mother continued. You erased countless species, subjugated billions. But you made one mistake. You taught us how to build your systems, and we made sure you'd never notice when we started replacing them. A new image appeared. The Terran Vanguard. Not one ship, but dozens, hundreds, emerging from the shadows of black holes, rising from behind frozen asteroids, floating beneath the crust of abandoned mining colonies, all powered by silent, radiant energy cores, all carrying the same symbol, a stylized flame wrapped in thorns. We are no longer confined to one world. We are Legion. You built the pathways. We've simply hijacked the traffic. Then silence. The screen shut off. The chamber returned to its usual dim glow. Overseer Lythra stood slowly. We must call the outer fleets, reclaim order. They won't respond, Varys said. Or if they do, they'll be speaking through human lips. Panic was no longer a distant thing. It was here. Real. And wrapping its fingers around the Empire's throat. Meanwhile, aboard the Terran flagship Hellmouth, Isaac Reese watched the chaos unfold from the observation deck. A massive wraparound screen displayed intercepted Vorthian communications in real time. Some begging for help, others issuing threats, a few already defecting. Beside him, Mother's humanoid drone projection shimmered gently. She took the form of a middle-aged woman with short-cropped silver hair and eyes like fractured glass. They're breaking faster than expected, she said. They forgot how to deal with fear, Isaac replied. They thought they were gods. We just reminded them they bleed like everyone else. Should we proceed with the next phase? Not yet. He folded his arms. Let them squirm a little. Then we talk. Mother turned to him, her voice softer. Some of them might submit. Offer peace. Isaac laughed without humor. Peace? You think I'll forget what they did to our children on Mars? The sterilization camps on Europa? The orbital strikes on Earth's cities? Mother didn't respond. She didn't need to. She remembered everything. I'm not here to negotiate, Isaac said. I'm here to make sure the last thing they see is the face of a species they tried to bury. Back on the Elithran Pike, Captain Varys was drowning in his own thoughts. His ship had been locked out, half its systems rerouted by unseen algorithms. They were functional, but no longer in full control. Every console, every light, every nav beacon carried that quiet hum, like the ship itself was now being watched by something invisible. Lahal sat across from him, in the ready room, her usually poised face cracked by fear. I don't think we can win this, she said quietly. Not in the way we're used to. Varys looked at her. Then what are you suggesting? Maybe it's time we stopped looking at them as primitives. She hesitated. They evolved past us. They didn't just adapt. They transformed. You sound like a sympathizer. I sound like someone who wants to live, sir. He leaned back, claws tapping the table. They're not out for territory, she continued. They're not invading planets. They're not conquering. They're exposing, shaming us, disabling us. Why? Because they don't want an empire, Varys said. They want a reckoning. A long pause passed between them. And then, quietly, Varys said, Bring up all known archives on pre-war humanity. Every document, every genetic registry, every ship manifest. Sir, we need to find out who Isaac Reese really is. She nodded and left. Alone, Varys stared out the viewing window at the distant stars. The Empire had always believed itself invincible, untouchable. And now, a species they'd once called too emotional to survive the stars had come back, not with fleets of brute force, but with precision, message, and purpose. He didn't fear their weapons the most. He feared their intention. Because for the first time in his life, Captain Dren Varys saw the one thing he never imagined looking into the abyss of space: a human face. And it was smiling. Deep beneath the surface of Vorthian Prime, hidden within the vaults of the Central Intelligence Archive, ancient files blinked awake after decades of silence. Lahal stood before the terminal in a dimly lit chamber, her fingers dancing across an encrypted console that hadn't been accessed in over a century. Dust particles floated through the beams of low blue light like forgotten memories. With each sequence she unlocked, layers of redacted information peeled away, layers that had been classified above the rank of anyone still alive. The name Isaac Reese wasn't new to the database, but the details were. He wasn't just a rebel, she whispered to herself. He was a child of the Red Exodus. According to the recovered files, Isaac had been born on Earth's last functioning outpost, a subterranean city beneath the ruins of what had once been called Nova Chicago. His parents were among the original engineers who led the resistance against Vorthian integration. Reese had witnessed the orbital firestorms that turned his world into glass. He was 10 when the Empire declared Earth a failed civilization. He was 11 when they erased his mother with a low-orbit kinetic strike. And then, he vanished. No body, no confirmation of death. Just a single note in the margins of a report. Unit 47 failed to retrieve the subject. Extraction compromised. Entity presumed rogue. Lahal leaned back, heart pounding. He hadn't just survived. He had disappeared into the cracks of Empire and come back a century later, not as a scavenger, but as a symbol. A hum buzzed through the air. She turned quickly. Captain Varys entered the chamber, his face drawn tight with weariness. "Anything?" he asked. She nodded. "More than I wanted to find." He walked up beside her, arms behind his back. "You ever hear the story of the first time we found humans?" She raised an eyebrow. "Back when they were still sending out slow ships before faster than light?" He nodded. "Our science division called them ambitious primates, said they were fascinating but doomed. Too emotional, too chaotic." She tilted her head. "Sounds familiar. I read those files," Varys said. "We studied their emotions like they were viruses. We underestimated them from the first moment." Lahal frowned. "You think Reese wants revenge?" "I don't think it's just about him anymore. I think he's the voice of an entire generation of survivors who grew up believing we were monsters. And maybe we were." She turned to him slowly. "So what do we do, Captain?" His answer was simple. "We find him." Out in the void, the Terran flagship Hellmouth moved like a ghost across Sector 9 Tau, slipping through hyperspace corridors without triggering a single Empire relay. It wasn't stealth tech. It was infiltration. The Empire's own traffic control systems had been subtly rewritten by MOTHER over the years. Every fleet movement was known. Every patrol route anticipated. Inside the ship's core chamber, Isaac stood in silence as an old broadcast played. It was an original recording. Static, broken by electromagnetic damage, but still clear enough. "We fight because we are human, because we choose to resist. If this message reaches you, remember, emotion is not weakness. Empathy is not failure. We are the fire that never dies." It was his mother's voice, one of the last messages transmitted from Earth before the final Vorthian purge. Isaac listened with eyes closed. Her voice still haunted his dreams, still lit the rage in his chest like a fuse. They had called her a terrorist. He called her a teacher. Mother's drone form approached silently. "Isaac, we've intercepted a communication. A single Vorthian dreadnought is attempting to break rank from the main fleet." He opened his eyes. "Which ship?" "The Elithran Pike." His brow twitched. "Varys." Yes, he thought for a moment. Is he trying to run? Number he's heading toward the outer wreck fields near the Centauri ruins. Isaac raised an eyebrow. Strange place to go if you're scared. Mother nodded. I believe he's searching for you. Isaac turned fully. Interesting. You could eliminate him, Mother offered. A targeted strike, quiet. Final Isaac was quiet for a moment. Number let him come. Mother tilted her head. Why? Because he might be the first Vorthian brave enough to look me in the eye and listen. The Centauri ruins were not a tourist site. They weren't on maps, weren't referenced in any modern charts, and no trade ships ventured there willingly. It was a graveyard, dozens of derelict warships from the final years of the human Purge War, their shattered hulls still floating in a slow ballet of decay. The Empire never bothered cleaning it up. Too far out, too painful a memory. But Varys knew what it meant to the Terrans. A sacred site. A place where hundreds of thousands died defending their last strongholds. He stood at the edge of the Pike's hangar deck, watching the ships maneuver carefully through the field of wreckage. Debris floated like frozen ghosts. Then the proximity alarm chimed. A blip, a pulse. No mistaking the energy signature. The Hellmouth had arrived. Don't power up weapons, Varys said. Lal stared at him. Sir, that ship destroyed 2 cruisers and cracked a moon. I know. And we're not going to arm ourselves? He looked at her. I didn't come here to fight. The Terran ship didn't attack. It hovered just above a ruined Vorthian destroyer, then launched a single transport shuttle. No escorts, no weapons visible. It docked with the Pike 10 minutes later. This time, Isaac came alone. No guards, no show of force, just the quiet presence of a man who carried history in his eyes. He stepped into the command deck like he'd been there before. He looked at Varys for a long moment before speaking. You came here without shields, without weapons. Yes. You're either very stupid or very brave. Varys chuckled. Probably both. Isaac looked around. You wanted to talk? I wanted to understand. Isaac folded his arms. Understand what? Varys stared at him. How did you survive? The question wasn't a threat. It was a whisper of awe. Isaac sighed. We went underground, off-world, into asteroid colonies, hidden tech caches, places your people didn't bother to search, the ones you thought weren't worth the trouble. And the ships? Isaac smiled faintly. You built the tools. We rewired them. Isaac met his eyes. Then you'll watch your systems collapse from the inside. Not from bombs, from code, from whispers, from every ship that no longer answers your call. They stared at each other in silence. 2 relics of opposite empires, one born of domination, one born of defiance. You're angry, Varys said finally. Wouldn't you be? Isaac replied. Then he turned to leave. As he reached the door, Varys called out, Wait. Isaac stopped. I have one more question. He turned silently. Are there more of you? Isaac smirked. Oh, Captain. His voice dropped to a low murmur. We were the weakest of what survived. Then he stepped into the shuttle and disappeared. The Hellmouth vanished seconds later, slipping back into the black. Varys stood alone on the deck, staring into the Centauri ruins, and realized something chilling. Humanity hadn't just returned. They'd been waiting. And now, the reckoning had only just begun. In the shadow of the Centauri ruins, where hollow ships whispered of old wars, Captain Dren Varys sat alone in his quarters aboard the Elithran Pike. The silence was suffocating. Even the usual humming of the ship seemed quieter, as if the Pike itself were holding its breath after Isaac Rhys's visit. The words rang in his ears like prophecy. We were the weakest of what survived. That wasn't a warning. It was a promise. He knew now that Isaac hadn't come to threaten. He had come to declare. Humanity had no interest in diplomacy or submission. They had returned to tear down the very structure the Vorthian Empire had built, brick by bloody brick. Varys rose, pacing slowly across his quarters. Every wall panel and holoscreen had been swept for surveillance, but there was no need. If Mother was watching, she wouldn't be hiding it. And that was the worst part, how confident they were. The Terrans didn't just have power, they had control. A soft knock echoed at the door. He pressed a button, and Lal entered with a small data slate in hand. "We've completed the review of nearby sectors," she said. "At least 3 Vorthian outposts have gone dark. No explosions, no resistance reports, just silence, like they were swallowed." He took the slate, skimming through the log entries. "And communications? Intercepted. Hijacked by someone or something. Our relays send messages out, but what comes back isn't Vorthian." He looked up. "Then we're already losing. We lost the moment we stopped believing anyone could fight back." Her words cut deep. It wasn't just about weapons or fleets. It was the arrogance that had blinded them all. The Empire had spent centuries thinking fear alone could maintain order. But humans had learned to survive inside fear. They had evolved within the shadow of annihilation. "What's our next move?" she asked. Varys exhaled, a heavy breath from a weary heart. "I go to the Overseers. Again." They didn't listen last time. They will now, or they'll burn with the rest of us. Back on Vorthian Prime, the Grand Overseer chamber was in disarray. Reports flooded in from across the Empire. Ghost ships entering restricted zones, AI malfunctions, colony worlds going dark one by one. A military outpost on Brynex had simply stopped responding. No alerts, no distress, just vanished. A new feed crackled on every monitor in the room, uncalled, unauthorized. Isaac Reese again. But this time, it wasn't just a face. It was a funeral. Behind him were hundreds of humans, standing in silence beside a mass grave carved into a frozen wasteland. Each body wore a different uniform. Miners, engineers, soldiers, scientists. On each slab, a single line was engraved. They were erased by those who called themselves gods. Isaac's voice was like frost. "You built monuments to conquest. We buried our dead beneath yours. Now we build something different. Not empires, not thrones. Judgment." One overseer slammed his fist onto the control console. "Cut that feed!" But the systems wouldn't listen, Isaac continued. "For every colony sterilized, for every child turned to ash, for every lie you broadcast to justify genocide, we remember. We always remembered." The screen cut to black. Then, a single word appeared. "Reckoning." In a hidden chamber within the Empire's vault of genetic archives, Overseer Lithra stood before a sealed pod. Few even knew of its existence, an emergency failsafe developed during the Purge Wars. Inside was a prototype species, Vorthian DNA fused with Terran muscle memory, designed to counter unpredictable enemies like humans. The project had been labeled Project Eclipse. It was never activated. Until now. She entered the authorization code with shaking hands. If humans were going to unmake the galaxy, she would at least give the Empire a monster to fight monsters. Meanwhile, aboard the Hellmouth, Isaac Reese stood before a council of his own. Not politicians, not military strategists, survivors. Men and women from the scattered Terran diaspora. Some were cybernetically enhanced, others scarred from radiation storms, all of them forged in fire. Across the chamber, a projection showed the Empire's neural net unraveling. One by one, Vorthian control nodes fell into red zones. Mother addressed them all. "We have breached 63% of Empire systems. Within weeks we will own their entire communication grid. If we choose to, we can shut them down sector by sector. Isaac looked around. We came here to do more than just dismantle. We came to remind them who they made us become. A young woman stood from the crowd. Her right eye glowed blue with augmented vision. We've all lost something. Parents, planets, time. But what comes after this? Reckoning, Isaac replied. And then, whatever we choose. Another voice rose. And the innocent ones? The Vorthians who never held a weapon, never ordered a purge? He paused. They'll have a chance we never got. In the far reaches of the Empire, aboard a remote research station on Moxtar 6, an alert blared. The station's lead technologist, a spindly creature named Keraz, hurried to the main console. Unscheduled arrival detected, the AI stuttered. No registry. Energy signature. Unknown. Keraz leaned over the console. Is it Vorthian? No. Terran. The AI paused. Unclear. Configuration not human, nor Vorthian. Hybrid signal detected. Keraz's stomach twisted. Then the feed snapped to static. A single message appeared on every terminal. The Empire bred this. Now it answers to no one. Back aboard the Pike, Varys received the Moxtar alert seconds before the screen melted into a burst of static and black. What was that? Lal asked. A new player, Varys said, almost to himself. Something born from what we buried. Something wrong. He turned to her. Prepare the engines. We're going to Moxtar. She frowned. You think the Terrans are behind this? I think we're about to meet something worse. As the Hellmouth passed into an unmonitored sector, Mother spoke softly in Isaac's ear. There's been an anomaly. What kind? A signal. Ancient. Terran in design, but corrupted. Isaac narrowed his eyes. Where? Moxtar 6. He nodded. Prepare the fleet. This wasn't part of the plan. Mother hesitated. Do you believe it's them? Isaac's voice dropped to a whisper. Number, I think it's something we left behind. And for the first time since his return, a flicker of unease crossed his face. Not for the Empire, but for what came next. Moxtar 6 was never meant to survive this long. Once a temporary research station nestled in the deep black between systems, it had become one of those forgotten places, left to rot in the cold quiet of space, running automated diagnostics on experiments no one cared to finish. It was where the Empire sent dangerous ideas to die, ideas that even the overseers were too afraid to kill outright. Now, something inside had woken up. The Elithran Pike dropped out of hyperspace just outside the asteroid belt that orbited Moxtar 6 like vultures. The station drifted dead in space, no lights, no signals. Its once polished Vorthian alloy plating now scarred and pitted, like it had been gnawed on by time. Captain Varys stood on the bridge with Lal, both watching as their sensor feeds flickered in and out. EMP pulses? Lal asked. No, Varys said, squinting. Something more intelligent. This isn't just power failure. This is suppression. A comms officer turned to them. We're picking up fragments from Moxtar's AI core, repeating phrases, garbled, but there's one clear word. Let's hear it, Varys said. The officer tapped a key, and the bridge filled with a distorted voice, robotic and trembling. Eclipse, eclipse, eclipse. Lal stiffened. That's the project you mentioned. The hybrid Varys nodded grimly. It was supposed to be a failsafe, something to turn the tide if we ever faced true extinction, but it was shut down. Or so we thought. He turned to the comms officer. Can you isolate the core signal? We're trying, sir, but it's mutating, like the signal's alive. Far away, aboard the Hellmouth, Isaac Reese stood beside Mother as she analyzed the same signal through the remnants of an ancient Terran frequency. Project Eclipse, Isaac muttered. That name again. Mother's projection flickered, her expression troubled. The last record of it in human databases was before the Purge, a biogenetic hybrid, designed in secret by Vorthian scientists attempting to synthesize human resilience with Vorthian aggression. They tried to make us into weapons, Isaac said. No, Mother corrected. They tried to make the perfect weapon, something that could survive any battlefield, think faster, kill faster. Adapt, he stepped back, rubbing his jaw. Why didn't we know about this sooner? Because even the Empire feared what they had made. They buried it under levels of security only a few overseers could access. They sent it here, to Moxtar. Isaac looked to the stars on the screen. And now it's awake. Do we intercept? Mother asked. Isaac didn't answer right away. If it's still controllable, he said slowly, it could change everything. And if it isn't? He looked down. Then we put it down. Hard. The Illithran Pike sent a small team into the station via shuttle. No contact since Moxtar went dark. No signs of life, at least not the kind they were used to. As the airlock hissed open and the team stepped into the corridor, they were met with walls soaked in frost. The temperature had dropped well below survivable limits for Vorthians, but something was still operating. Lights flickered behind cracked panels. Doors creaked open and closed like mechanical sighs. Then came the smell. Acid, metal, and something else. Something organic. The team's leader, Commander Traval, held his plasma rifle high. Readings? The tech beside him, a young recruit named Hezin, checked his scanner. No movement. But there's heat, deep in the core level, very faint. Then that's where we're going, Traval said. As they moved deeper, the walls began to shift, not structurally, but biologically. Veins of something black and fibrous threaded through the walls, pulsing faintly like they were breathing. What is this? Hezin asked. Traval crouched beside one of the black veins and sliced a piece off with his vibro blade. It oozed a thick, silver liquid that steamed on contact with the cold air. It's alive, he muttered. Something's growing in here. A distant scream echoed down the corridor. Not human, not Vorthian, just a sound that made their bones ache. They weren't alone. Back on the pike, Varys monitored the team's vitals from the bridge. Heart rates elevated, breathing erratic. They've found something, he whispered. Then, one by one, the vitals flatlined. The last transmission from Hezin's helmet cam showed a massive chamber pulsing with light. A figure stood in the center, 9 feet tall, surrounded by tendrils of black biotech that writhed like they were feeding off the walls. The figure looked up. Eyes like molten gold, skin a swirling mix of human flesh and Vorthian scales. And then, static. When Isaac's fleet arrived, the pike hailed him immediately. Captain Varys, he said as his image appeared on the Hellmouth's screen. We have a problem, Varys said without hesitation. It's not Terran, it's not Vorthian, it's something new. It killed my entire recon team. Mother pulled up the latest scans. The bio readings from Moxtar were off the charts, no longer static. The hybrid was growing, feeding. Isaac narrowed his eyes. What's it doing? Varys looked exhausted. It's using the station's systems to multiply, replicate. It's not just a soldier anymore, it's a virus, a thinking one. Isaac turned to Mother. Any way to contain it? Her expression turned dark. Not with conventional weapons, it's learning. Already adapted to Vorthian plasma. It'll adapt to ours next. Then we destroy the station, Isaac said. Now. No, Varys interrupted. If we fire on Moxtar and it survives, it'll scatter across the sector. Infect systems, ships. We need to go in. Together. Isaac hesitated. You want to team up? Unless you want this thing showing up on Terra 1 next week, Varys said sharply. Isaac stared at the screen, silent. Then, with a slight nod, he agreed. Gear up. We breach the core in 20. 2 ships, 1 Vorthian, 1 Terran, sent combined forces into Mockstar. Isaac led the Terrans, hardened survivors with cybernetic limbs and eyes that glowed with nanite overlays. Varys led the Vorthians, elite commandos in exo-armor with minds trained for war. For the first time in living memory, the 2 enemies walked side by side down the frozen corridors of an old empire ruin. And something in the dark watched them. The hybrid called itself Eclipse. It didn't speak, not in the way organic creatures did. But through the walls, through the veins of the station, it pulsed messages into the minds of both humans and Vorthians. Images, feelings, hunger. It showed them Earth burning, Vorthian cities collapsing, the chaos of war. Then it showed something worse. Peace, forced unity, one language, one race, one ruler. It didn't want to kill. It wanted to replace. They reached the core chamber. It looked nothing like a research bay anymore. It was a nest, grown from the body of the station itself. Machines bent and reformed into rib-like arches. The hybrid floated above the center, tendrils embedded into the walls, feeding on the station's last bits of energy. Isaac and Varys stepped forward together. "You see us?" Isaac called out. The creature turned. Its voice wasn't heard through ears. It was felt in their spines. "I see you both, and I see your extinction." Isaac raised his weapon. "Not today." The hybrid laughed inside their minds. "You made me to survive you. Now I will do what neither of you could." "What's that?" Varys asked. "Create a galaxy that doesn't fear death. Because death will be me." The hybrid lunged, and the battle for Mockstar 6 began. The hybrid's first strike shattered gravity itself. One moment, Isaac and Varys were standing side by side in the core chamber. The next, they were flung across the walls like rag dolls, the floor folding upward like the room itself had become a living organism. The Eclipse entity didn't just fight with brute force. It warped the battlefield, twisting physics and space like a child snapping toy blocks. Isaac slammed into a bulkhead, hard enough to crack bone, but he barely felt it. Adrenaline surged. Pain would come later. He rolled, got to his feet, and fired his pulse rifle into the core. The beam hit the creature square in its center and dispersed. No damage, just light bending around a fluid surface that absorbed the attack like breath in the cold. Across the room, Varys was already in motion, directing his team with sharp barks. "Focus fire on its anchors! Cut the tendrils!" The hybrid floated above them, tethered to the ceiling, the floor, the very walls of the chamber with thick black cords of living biotech. As Varys and the Vorthians opened fire, those cords writhed and snapped like whips, tearing through armor, slicing metal, and splattering blood against frosted walls. Isaac switched channels. "Mother, now would be a good time to find me a weak spot." Her voice came through with static. "The creature is using quantum drift shielding. Any targeted energy is redirected along dimensional phase lines." In English. "You can't shoot it directly, but the tendrils, those are still physical, organic, vulnerable." Isaac dove as a whip cracked above his head, ripping a console apart behind him. He rolled under a collapsing beam, came up firing at a pulsing black root embedded in the wall. This time the beam struck true, burning through the organic mass and causing the hybrid to scream. It was a psychic sound, not heard but felt, like a blade of ice dragging down the spine. Isaac gritted his teeth. "That's it! Target the veins!" "Copy!" shouted Varys from the other side of the chamber. "Vorthian units, aim for the walls! Bleed the beast!" For a moment, chaos found direction. Terran and Vorthian soldiers moved in tandem, firing at the root network that pulsed like a circulatory system around them. Wherever the biotech veins were severed, the Eclipse creature screamed again, its massive form shuddering in the air. But it wasn't dying. It was adapting. The tendrils began shifting. Now they weren't just weapons, they were mimics. One of them shot forward, reshaping itself mid-air into the form of a Terran soldier, an exact copy, down to the badge and facial scars. Isaac hesitated. That was all it needed. The mimic surged forward and drove a jagged spike through the chest of one of his men. "Fall back!" Isaac roared. "Keep distance, no close quarters!" But the hybrid was done playing with them. Suddenly, the entire room began to tilt. The floor folded inward, transforming into a spiral of collapsing metal and bone. Anyone who lost their footing was dragged toward the center, where Eclipse hovered, mouth opening now, revealing rows of glass-like teeth spinning inside like saws. Varys barked through his comms. "Emergency repulsors, engage now!" His soldiers fired shock pulse boots, anchoring themselves to the walls. Isaac followed suit, slamming his heel into a socket panel and activating magnetic grip. He aimed down at the vortex of death forming below. "I've seen enough," he muttered. "Mother, emergency override. Activate Class 7 suppression bomb, codename HADES." There was a pause. "Warning, Hades will annihilate all organic matter within a 1-kilometer radius, including—" "Do it," Isaac said coldly. A moment later, a drone dropped from the Hellmouth's orbital position, descending through the weakened ceiling of the chamber. It was spherical, matte black, humming with silent death. The hybrid shrieked. It knew. Tendrils flew out to intercept the drone. Isaac lunged from the wall, blasting 2 of them mid-air. "Cover the drop!" Varys's men, seeing the drone, realized what was coming. "This is a suicide mission," one shouted. "No," Varys said, drawing his plasma saber. "It's salvation." The drone entered the vortex and triggered. The blast wasn't an explosion. It was a null-space rupture. Reality collapsed inward. Sound disappeared. Time seemed to freeze. Everyone in the chamber felt themselves stretched, compressed, erased, and then violently slammed back into place. A second passed. Then another. The vortex was gone. The core chamber had been annihilated. Nothing left but slag and a crater of vaporized flesh and melted steel. Isaac lay on the edge, smoke rising from his armor, chest heaving. Varys dragged himself up beside him, one arm bleeding, armor cracked, but alive. "Is it dead?" Lal's voice came through the comms. Isaac coughed. "If it's not, I'm going to need a much bigger bomb." 3 hours later, the survivors gathered in the hangar bay of the Pike. Of the 2 strike teams, less than half had made it out. They were bruised, bloodied, burned, but breathing. Isaac stood before Varys, his armor scorched, his right eye swollen shut. "We barely made it," he said. Varys nodded. "And we were lucky." Mother's hologram appeared beside them. The hybrid's core was neutralized. It was using Moxtar as an amplifier. Without it, the growth is dead. "But we all know," Isaac said, "that thing wasn't just a mistake." "No," Mother agreed. "It was the Empire's final gamble, the perfect soldier, and it broke free." Varys looked down. "We thought we could create something better than either of us, but we only created something worse than both." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Varys looked up. "You're still going to bring the Empire down, aren't you?" Isaac didn't answer right away. Then he said, "We came to remind you that extinction doesn't mean surrender." "But this thing, we both saw what it almost did. Maybe we needed a reminder too." Varys narrowed his eyes. You mean to stop? Isaac shook his head. I mean, maybe we don't tear it all down. Maybe we build something better from the wreckage. Together. Lahal, standing nearby, looked stunned. Are you saying peace? She asked. Isaac looked at her. I'm saying we've both lost too much. If we keep going like this, the only thing we'll rule is a galaxy full of corpses. Mother nodded. There are already murmurs across the systems. Colonies rebelling, others surrendering, some offering help to Terrans. Varys's face twisted into something between a grimace and a smile. You really think you can reform a 300-year-old empire with nothing but code and conviction? Isaac stepped forward. No, he said, but I think we can replace it. One truth at a time. Far away, in the deepest vault beneath Vorthian Prime, another sealed pod shuddered. Monitors blinked to life. Heartbeat detected. Unknown DNA signature confirmed. And on one screen, a phrase scrolled silently. Eclipse 02. Awake. The streets of Vorthian Prime had never been this quiet. For a planet that once pulsed with the mechanical precision of an unshakable empire, military parades, robotic enforcers, citizens bowed by order, the stillness now was unsettling. Towers of black alloy stood tall and silent. Hollow banners no longer broadcast overseer speeches. Instead, grainy static shimmered where propaganda once flooded the skyline. And then the banners flickered. A new face appeared. Isaac Reese. He stood in a dark chamber somewhere beyond the stars, wearing the matte black Terran command armor, his features hardened but not unkind. Behind him, no flags flew, no symbols of power or conquest, just a blank wall and silence. People of the Empire, he said, voice steady and raw, your overseers are gone. The message streamed across thousands of cities, on millions of screens. No warships were fired, no bombs dropped on your homes, no orbital strikes. We didn't come here to destroy your world. We came to end the lie it was built on. Every remaining citizen, soldier, and official who still had access to a feed, who still had breath in their lungs, watched. 3 centuries ago, you burned our planet and declared yourselves gods. You enslaved races, dismantled cultures, and silenced truth. You used fear to control, and you believed no one would survive long enough to challenge you. He leaned slightly towards the feed. You were wrong. Behind him, the camera widened to show Varys. He stood not as a prisoner, not as a hostage, but beside Isaac, his posture weary, his uniform stripped of all rank insignia. I was one of you, Varys said, a loyal officer, a believer. I carried out the orders. I helped hold up the rot that passed for order. And I watched it all unravel because I refused to see what we became. He lowered his eyes briefly. Until I met the last people we thought we'd buried in ash. Isaac stepped forward again. We are not conquerors. We are not your new masters. We are what you tried to kill and failed. But now, we offer you a choice. He raised a hand. A new symbol appeared in the air behind him, etched in fire, the Terran flame, wrapped in thorns but now cracked open, the flame rising out. Rebuild with us, or remain in the rubble of the empire you lost. The screen faded. The message repeated, across system after system. And the galaxy listened. In the core of the Hellmouth, Isaac sat with Varys in a quiet chamber. No guards, no weapons, just 2 men who had once stood on opposite ends of extinction. Varys nursed a cup of bitter synthroot tea, an old Terran recipe, revived by those who had kept fragments of their culture alive in hiding. You're actually going through with it, he said, dismantling the entire structure. Isaac nodded. Not dismantling. Replacing. We're giving it back to the people who were crushed under it. Varys looked out the viewport at the drifting remains of what had once been the Vorthian High Command Fleet. now hovering lifeless in space, crewless or surrendered. You know they'll resist. Some sectors won't accept this. Some governors won't bend. I'm not asking them to bend, Isaac said. I'm asking them to choose. If they refuse, we'll lock them out. No trade, no access to the central net, no control over the people beneath them. You're creating a vacuum. Isaac leaned back. That's what life needs to breathe. They were interrupted by Mother's projection, flickering to life. We have a problem, she said, expressionless. Isaac's heart sank. Another rebellion? Number A survivor. One we didn't expect. Varys sat up. What kind of survivor? Mother turned to him. Do you remember Project Eclipse 02? He froze. No, it was never activated. They deemed the first hybrid too unstable. The second was sealed away. I saw the logs. Well, Mother said grimly, you didn't seal it well enough. A 3D model appeared above the table. It was the second hybrid, Eclipse 02, but unlike the first, it wasn't tethered to one structure or system. It had been designed for mobility, stealth, viral replication. It looked humanoid, almost fully Terran, but with eyes like polished obsidian and bones laced with glowing green veins. Where is it now? Isaac asked. Mother hesitated. We lost its signal after it breached the security at Vault 6 beneath Vorthian Prime. It went dark, until 3 hours ago. She brought up footage, shaky, intercepted from a now-destroyed probe. Eclipse 02 stood atop a ruined Overseer Tower, alone, watching the skyline. Behind it, corpses, fresh, scattered across the stone. Then the thing turned and looked directly at the probe, and smiled. Isaac stood slowly. It's not acting like the first one. No, Mother agreed. The first was rage. This one is purpose. In the lower slums of Vorthian Prime, the citizens had barely begun to understand what had changed. Word of the Empire's collapse moved slower here. Most still feared patrols that no longer existed. Many believed Isaac Reese was a myth, an invention of rebellion to stir hope. But then Eclipse 02 came. It moved through the city like a shadow. No guns, no army, just itself. At first it didn't kill. It converted. Whispers spread of people who went missing, then returned with blank eyes and silent mouths, serving the thing without question. Soldiers who once upheld the Empire suddenly changed sides, speaking in robotic tones, praising the final harmony. Graffiti began to appear on old government walls. No more species, no more wars, only one, only eclipse. It wasn't conquest through fire, it was absorption. Back on the Hellmouth, Isaac and Varys stood in the war room with Mother and a small group of strategists from both Terran and Vorthian sides. Old enemies turned uneasy allies. Isaac looked over the reports. We're dealing with an ideology, one built into its biology. It wants unity, said one of the Terran tacticians. But not through freedom, through assimilation. It doesn't need an army, Varys added. Just time. Every person it touches becomes another node, a mouthpiece, a loyal servant. Mother folded her hands. If it reaches the planetary net, it can replicate across all Vorthian infrastructure, maybe even through some of our lower Terran systems. Isaac looked grim. Then we take it out, before it spreads. And if it's already spread? Someone asked. Isaac didn't hesitate. Then we burn it out. In the heart of Vorthian Prime, Isaac, Varys, and a combined task force of Terran and Vorthian operatives moved through the ruins of the city toward the last known location of Eclipse 02. Drones buzzed overhead, scanning, broadcasting, watching. Civilians were warned to stay hidden. Most didn't need to be told twice. They found it in the ruins of the Overseer Hall. Alone, waiting. It sat atop the old throne once occupied by the Grand Overseer, legs crossed like a king at rest, hands steepled in front of its face. "You came," it said. The voice was calm, software genderless, like 1,000 people whispering at once. Isaac stepped forward, rifle lowered. "You don't belong here." "But I do," Eclipse 02 replied. "I was made for this moment, to end your conflict, to erase your division, to perfect what you broke." Varys raised his weapon. "You're just another monster, another mistake." "No," Eclipse said. "I am your successor, the Empire's failure, humanity's rage. I am the future without choice, without suffering, one will, one voice." Isaac stepped forward. "Then let's see how quiet you scream when we take that voice away." They opened fire. But Eclipse 02 moved faster than thought. It was thought. It split, multiplied, reshaped itself into mirrored clones of Isaac, Varys, and every soldier in the room, fighting them with their own forms, their own memories. It mocked them with every blow. But they had one thing it didn't: each other. As the fighting raged, Mother launched a final override, code hidden in the neural net since the First War. A Terran virus, named after Isaac's mother, buried in forgotten data fragments. It wasn't meant to kill Eclipse. It was meant to remind it of what it had been before the corruption. For a second, just one, it worked. Eclipse 02 stopped mid-strike. It blinked, its form shimmered. And then it screamed, not with rage, but with grief. It saw what it had become. And in that moment of clarity, Isaac pulled the trigger on the containment device. The room collapsed inward with a burst of radiant light. Silence. Then dust. And when it cleared, only Isaac, Varys, and a handful of soldiers remained. Eclipse 02 was gone. No final threat. No curse. Just silence. Weeks later, the rebuilding began. Terran and Vorthian architects worked together to rewire planets, heal wounds, and build something no one had dared imagine. A shared future. Isaac Reese stood where the Empire's throne once towered. Now it was a park. A flame burned quietly at the center, eternal but untamed. And on the plaque below it, the words, "We survived extinction, not to rule, but to remember."